Lesson 2 is understanding variables and expressions. Some vocabulary words. We have variables, constants, coefficients, factors, and terms. This lesson is very important that you understand what these terms mean. So a variable is any symbol that represents an unknown number. Usually your variables are letters. So if you look down the bottom here, you can see that P is a variable. And you notice in this slide, I have things color-coded so you can see where the example is matching up with the vocabulary word. So P is a variable. We don't know what P equals. It represents an unknown number. The constant. A constant is a quantity whose value that does not change. So any number is, in this example, is a 4. The 4 never changes. A 4 is a 4. There is also another constant in this example. 5 is also a constant. 5 never changes. It's always going to be a 5. But 5 is also a coefficient. And coefficients are numeric factors in an expression. So in other words, if you think of it, it's a number that's always directly in front of a variable. So 5 is both a constant and a coefficient, but 4 is only a constant. And the only reason why 4 is just a constant is because there is no letter after or attached to the number 4. Factors are numbers and or letters multiplied together. So 5p right here, they're multiplying 5 times p. So those are factors. The factors are 5 and p. They're multiplying those two together. And then terms. Terms are parts of an expression separated by positive or subtraction or plus or minus signs. So in this case, I have one term here and I have another term here. And I know I have two terms because I have an addition sign in the middle that's dividing them two. They're separating them. So I have two terms. I got one variable. I have two constants. I have one coefficient. I have two factors. And I have two terms. So we're going to be working with all these vocabulary words in our lesson today. So example 1, identifying variables and constants. So let's look at the first one. I have 6 minus 3x. Variables, all my letters. What are all my letters in this? I have an x, so my variable would be x. Constant now. Constant, remember, are all numbers that don't change value. So that's a 6 and that's a 3. They're always going to be 6. They're always going to be 3. They're never going to change any value from there. Let's look at letter B. 71wz plus 28y. The variables, my letters for unknown numbers. I have w, I have z, and I have y. My constants, so every single number. Anytime they're asking for constant, it's every single number. So that's 71, and that's 28. Let's do one more on this slide, and we'll go to some more other examples. Let's do letter D, 24wz plus 12y. My variables, my letters, w, z, and y. Those are my three letters, my three variables. The constants, all my numbers, 24 and 12. So this is just giving you an example of how you can identify your variables and constants in an expression. Let's look at some other examples here, but this time these are still the same thing. So we'll do one more on this slide. Let's go with letter C. My variables here. My variables are v and w. And my constant, my only number, is 7. Look at some other examples here, identifying factors. So numbers and or letters that we multiply with each other, and then coefficients, all the numbers that are right in front of a letter or a variable. So letter A, 7VW. Let's list the factors, which means every number or letter we are multiplying. So that's a 7, that's a V, and that's a W. Anytime you see numbers and letters together with no signs in between, that means you're multiplying. My coefficients, my number in front of the letter, which is just the 7. So look at letter B, negative 5RST, my factors. I have a negative 5, I have an R, I have an S, and I have a T. All those are factors because I'm multiplying all of them together. And my coefficient, I have a negative 5. Make sure you keep that negative with the 5 because it stays within the 5. And let's look at letter C. This one's a little bit tricky. I would rewrite this. This is the same thing as saying 1/3 times y. Now it's going to be a little bit easier seeing our factors. Our factors, what are we multiplying? 1/3, and we're multiplying y. And then our coefficients, what's in front of our variable? Our variable is y, so right in front is 1/3. So our coefficient is 1/3. And letter D, CD. What are our factors? Well, I know there's a C. I know I'm multiplying by D, but I'm also multiplying by another number. We just don't see it. There's actually a 1 in front. So really, 1 is a factor. If you are multiplying by a variable and there's no number in front, there is a 1 there. We just never put the 1. So you have to remember that. So now our coefficients, our coefficient is a 1. Just remember, if the variable is by itself, it always has a coefficient of 1. Let's look at one more. We'll look at B and D in this example here. So letter B, UV divided by 4. Let's rewrite that. That's really saying 1/4, because really there's a 1 in front of here. So 1/4 times UV. So that's what it's really saying. Now it's a lot easier to determine our factors and our coefficients. Our factors, we are multiplying 1/4 U and V. We have 3 factors there. Our coefficients, my number in front of the variables, I have 1/4. And letter D, ABC. Remember, there's a 1 in front of here. So my factors, what am I multiplying? Multiplying 1, A, B, and C. So what is my coefficient? My coefficient, my number is 1. So there's a few examples of finding factors and coefficients in an expression. Example 3, identifying or writing the terms. To save some time on this video, I'm just going to underline or put a box around my terms. Remember, a term is always separated by positive and negative, plus and minus signs. So that's what I'm going to be looking for. I'm going to look at my plus and minus signs. So in letter A, I see a plus here and I see a minus here. So that means those are dividing my terms. So 6xy is one term, 57w is one term, and 24x divided by 5y is a term. So how many terms do I have? I have 3 terms, and I put boxes around those. Now on your assignments, you might not be able to, you won't have the picture in front of it. I guess you took it, if you took a screenshot of the problem and you put a box around it, but otherwise on your assignment, you would have to write 6xy, comma, 57w, comma, 24x divided by 5y as your three terms. So look at another example. Let's look at letter B. Here's a plus sign. Here's a minus sign. Here's another minus sign. Those are separating my terms. So let's put a box around my terms. One term, two terms, three terms, four terms. I have four terms in this example. And I put boxes around each one. So if they ask you to identify it, you'd have to write m, 3mn, 5t divided by d plus 8, and 9. That would be your four terms. Now, you can see on the bottom here, I have monomial, binomial, trinomial, and polynomials. Those are specific names that we would give to certain terms. So if you only have one term, say if it was just x squared that you have here, you would call that a monomial, one term. If there are two terms, like x squared plus 2x, we would call it a binomial. And if it's got three terms, like x squared plus 2x plus 1, that's three terms, that's a trinomial. Anything more than one term is called a polynomial. So just keep those vocabulary words in mind. You're going to hear those throughout the year. And let's look at a final example. Here we want to identify the terms and then answer some of these questions. Let's do B and C on this slide. So let's identify or write the terms. So we're going to put boxes around the first find out our plus and minuses. Here's a plus and here's a minus. So a trick is count how many plus and minus signs there are in between the terms and then add one, and that's how many terms you have. So I have a 1 plus sign here and a 1 minus sign here. So that's 2. That means I have to have 3 terms. 1 term, 2 terms, 3 terms. Do not count this plus between 4 plus 2x. That does not count as a plus sign to separate a term because this is grouped together. The 4 plus 2x divided by 38q, that is all grouped together. Okay, so I have 3 terms for letter B. Let's look at letter C. How many terms are in letter C? Well, here's 1 term. Here's second term. Here's a third term because they're all separated by a plus or a minus sign. So I have 3 terms. Now, what are our constants? What are all of our letters? I have an H and I have a B. Actually, those are my variables, sorry. My variables are H and B. My constants are all my numbers. So my numbers are 6.50. We have 3.25. And we have 0.75. So those would be our constants, all of our constants. So remember, constants are all numbers. If they would have asked for coefficients, then it would have just been 3.25 and 0.75. If you have any other questions or need to see more examples, you can also view the Khan Academy video that's also attached to this video.